Hello, welcome back. We are going to continue to read the novel Lord of the Mysteries, Volume 1, The Clown, by Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. Last time we read up to chapters 90. Client got a mission to complete by himself, and it's related to Sir Dewey and some girls who died working in his lead and porcelain factories. So client is attempting to find a solution. So, oh, chapter 19, 91, solution. Okay, yeah. So let's continue reading chapter 91, solution. The scenery started to distort, turning illusory and began to fade away. After Klein left his dreamlike state, his vision adapted to the darkness in the room. He knew that with 1 pound and 10 soli, which was 30 soli a week, Benson didn't have an easy time supporting the family according to the standards of an average family. He had thought that the majority of workers earn 20 soli a week. He had once heard Melissa remark that Lower Street of Iron Cross Street had 5, 7, or even 10 families squeezing into the same room. He had also learned from Benson that as a result of the situation in the southern continent, Kingdom's economy was in a recession for the past few months. He knew that a maid with board and lodging provided could earn between 3 soli and 6 pence to 6 soli a week. Klein extended his hand and pinched his glabella. He was silent for a long time until Sir Dewey asked, Officer, aren't you going to say anything? The psychiatrist I went to would always speak to me and ask questions in such a situation. However, I must say that I feel at peace. I almost fell asleep. I haven't heard any moans or cries yet. How do you do it? Client leaned back in the rocking chair. Instead of providing an answer, he asked in a gentle tone, Sir, do you know about lead poisoning? Do you know about the dangers of lead? Sir Dewey fell silent for a few seconds. I did not know about it in the past, but I do now. Are you telling me that my psychological problem stems from my guilt? My guilt towards the female lead and porcelain factory workers? Without waiting for client to answer, he continued just like he always had, in his position of power during a negotiation. Yes, I did feel guilty about this in the past, but I did compensate them. At my lead and porcelain factories, the worker do not earn less than other workers in the same industry. In Backland, lead and porcelain workers are paid no more than 8 soli a week, but I pay them 10, sometimes even more. Hmm. Many people criticize me for breaking ranks since it makes it harder for them to recruit workers. If not for the repeal of the Grain Act that made many farmers bankrupt, sending them to the cities, they would have had to raise their wages just like I did. Furthermore, I have also informed the supervisor of the factories to make sure that those with repeated headaches and blurry vision are to leave the areas where they are exposed to lead. If their illness is really severe, then they can ask for help at my charity foundation. I think I have done enough. Client spoke without a ripple of emotion in his voice. Sir, at times you cannot imagine how important a salary is to a poor person. Simply losing work for a week or two can result in an irreversible loss to their family, a loss that would cause tremendous grief. He paused before saying, I'm curious. Why wouldn't a kind person like you install equipment that can protect against dust and lead poisoning in your factories? Dewey looked at the ceiling and laughed ruefully. That would make my costs too high for me to bear. I would no longer be able to compete with the other lead and porcelain companies. I no longer pay too much attention to my profits in these areas of my business. In fact, I am even willing to fork out some money. But what's the point of keeping the business if I have to keep doing that? That can only help a number of workers and not become standard in the industry or affect change on other factories. That would merely result in me forking out money to support the workers. I heard that some factories even secretly hire slaves to minimize cost. Klein crossed his hand and said it after a moment of silence. Sir, the root of your psych- root of your psychological illness comes from the buildup of guilt. Despite you believing that the guilt has faded and disappeared over time, it wouldn't have any visible effects under normal circumstances. But there was something that triggered you and set off all the problems at once. Something that triggered me? I'm not aware of such a thing. Dewey said, puzzled, but with conviction. Klein allowed the chair to rock gently as he explained with a gentle tone. You did fall asleep for a few moments just now and told me something. Hypnosis? Dewey made a guess as he usually did. Klein did not give a direct reply, instead said, once saw a girl dying on her way to work while you were on your carriage. She had died because of lead poisoning. She was one of your workers who glazed porcelain while she was still alive. Dewey rubbed his temples, speechless before saying somewhat doubtful, I think that happened once, but I can't remember it clearly. His prolonged insomnia had left him in a poor mental state. He could only faintly recall seeing such a scene. He thought for a moment, but gave up taxing his brain. Instead, he asked, what was the worker's name? Well, what I meant was, what should I do to cure my psychological illness? Klein immediately replied, two things. First, the worker that died by the side of road was called Haley Walker. That was what you told me. She was the most direct trigger. So you have to find her parents and give them more compensation. Second, spread information of danger about the dangers of lead in newspapers and magazines. Allow your charity foundation to help more workers who suffered from the damage. If you succeed in becoming a member of parliament, push for enacting laws in this domain. Dewey sat up slowly and laughed in a deprecating manner. I will do all the rest, but to enact a law, I think it's impossible since there's still competition from nations beyond our country. Setting up such a law would just slip the entire industry in the country into a crisis. Factories become bankrupt one by one, and many workers would lose their jobs. Organizations that help the poor cannot save that many people. He got off. He slowly got off the bed and adjusted his collar. He then looked at Klein and said, Haley Walker, right? I'll immediately get Cullen to retrieve information about her from the porcelain company and find her parents. Officer, please wait with me and continuously evaluate my mental state. All right. Klein stood up slowly and smoothed his black and white checkered police uniform. At 11 in the morning in the living room of Deweyville, Klein sat on the sofa in silence as he looked at the man and woman being guided into the house by Butler Cullen. The two guests had blemished skins, wrinkles already woven into their faces. The man had such man the man had a slight hunch, while the woman had a mole under her eyelid. They looked nearly identical to what Klein had seen through Haley, just older and more haggard. They were so skinny that they were almost all bone. Their clothes were old and ragged. Klein even learned that they couldn't continue living on Lower Street or Iron Cross Street any further. So, Klein sensed an icy wind start to spiral through his spiritual perception. He pinched his glabella and shot a glance towards Sir Dewey. It was unknown when a faint, white, translucent, contorted figure had appeared behind him. Good morning, Honorable Sir. Healy's parents were unusually polite. Dewey rubbed his forehead and asked, are the both of you Haley Walker's parents? Doesn't she have a brother and a 2-year-old sister? Haley's mother answered in fear. Her brother broke his leg at the harbor some time back. We got him to take care of his sister at home. Dewey remained silent for a few seconds before he sighed. My deepest condolences for what happened to Haley. Upon hearing that, the eyes of Haley's parents immediately turned red. They opened their mouths and said over each other, "Thank you for your goodwill." The police told us that Haley died from lead poisoning. That's the term, right? Oh, my poor child. She was only 17. She was always so quiet, so determined. You had sent someone to visit her before and sponsored her burial. She's buried at Raphael Cemetery. Dewey glanced at Clan and changed his sitting posture. He leaned forward and said it with a serious tone, "That was actually an oversight of ours. I have to apologize. I have considered that I need to compensate you, to compensate Haley. Her weekly salary was 10 soli, was it not? 1 year would be 520 soli or 26 pounds. Let's assume that she would have worked for another 10 years. Cullen, give Haley's parent 300 pounds. Three, 300 pounds? Haley's parents were dumbfounded. They never had more than 1 pound of savings, even at their richest. It, it only it wasn't only them who were dazed. Even the expressions of bodyguards and the maids in the room were also all that of shock and envy. Even Sergeant Gate couldn't help draw a deep breath. His weekly salary was only 2 pounds, and amounting amongst his subordinates, only one chevron constable earned 1 pound a week. Amidst the silence, Butler Cullen walked out of the study and held a bulging sack. He opened the sack and revealed a stack of cash, some 1 pound, some 5 pounds, mostly made up of 1 or 5 soli. It was clear that Deweyville had made his subordinates receive change from the bank earlier. It's an expression of Sir Deweyville's goodwill. Cullen handed the sack over to Haley's parents after receiving confirmation from his master. Haley's parents took the sack, rubbed their eyes, and looking at it in disbelief. "No, this is too generous. We cannot accept this," they said as they held the sack tightly. Deweyville said in a deep voice, "This is what Haley deserves." "You truly are a noble, charitable knight." Haley's parents bowed repeatedly in agitation. They had smiles on their faces, smiles that they couldn't repress. They praised the knight repeatedly, repeating the same few adjectives they knew. They kept insisting that Haley would be grateful towards him in the heaven. Cullen, send them home. "Oh, take them to the bank first." Dewey heaved a sigh of relief and instructed his butler. Healy's parents hugged the sack tightly and walked toward the door quickly without stopping. Healy saw the faint translucent figure behind Sir Dewey attempt to extend its hands towards them, hoping to leave with them. But the parents' smiles were abnormally radiant. They didn't turn back. That figure turned fainter and soon vanished completely. Klein also sensed that the icy feeling in the guest hall had instantly returned to normal. From beginning to end, all he did was sit there silently, not expressing his opinion. "Officer, I feel much better. Now, can you tell me why butlers, servants, and bodyguards who could also hear the cries and moans? This shouldn't be solely a psychological illness of mine, right?" Dewey looked at him curiously. Inspector Toll, who knew the underlying truth, instantly became nervous. Klein replied without much expression. In psychology, we call this phenomena mass hysteria. Chapter 92, Psychological Expert. Mass hysteria? Sir Dewey, who had met many psychiatrists recently, ruminated over the term Klein had said. Despite their curiosity, his butlers, bodyguards, and servants didn't make a single sound since they had not been given permission by him. As for Sergeant Gate, he looked towards Klein doubtfully as if he had never heard of that concept. Klein controlled his habit of tapping the armrest with his fingertips and calmly explained, "Humans can be fooled easily by the second sensory organs. Mass hysteria is a kind of psychogenic illness that is a result of tense nerves and other factors amongst a group of individuals as they influence each other. The jargon he spewed out confused Sir Dewey, Sergeant Gate, and the rest, causing them to subconsciously opt to believe him. Let me give a simple example of this. This was one of the cases I had previously dealt with. One man held a dinner banquet and invited 35 guests. Midway, he suddenly felt disgusted and puked. After that, he even had severe diarrhea. After a couple of times, he began to believe that he had gotten food poisoning. He shared his speculation with the other guests on the way to the hospital. In the next 2 hours, there were more than 30 guests that had diarrhea amongst the 35 guests, with 26 of them experiencing nausea. They flooded the entire emergency rooms of the hospital. The doctors went through a detailed examination and performed cross checks, and they concluded that the very first man didn't have food poisoning at all. Instead, it was a result of stomach inflammation caused by a change of weather and cold liquor. The most surprising fact was that none of the guests who went to the hospital had food poisoning. In fact, not a single one of them was sick. This is mass hysteria. Dewey nodded slightly and marveled. I understand now. Humans do lie to them easily. It's no wonder that Emperor Roselle once said a lie would become reality once it's repeated 100 times. Officer, how may I address you? You're the most professional psychiatrist I have ever met. Inspector Moretti. Klein pointed at his epaulette and said, Sir, your troubles have been resolved temporarily for now. You can try to sleep now while I determine if there are other problems. If you are able to sleep well, please allow us to bid farewell ahead of time instead of waiting for you to wake up. All right, Dewey massaged his forehead, took his cane, and walked upstairs to his bedroom. Half hour later, a police carriage left the fountain at the door of Dewey's residence. While Sergeant Gate got off on the way and returned to his police station, Inspector Toll looked towards Klein. He complimented in jest. Even I believed that you were a real psychological expert. Before he finished his sentence, he saw the young man in the black and white checkered uniform looking expressionless. His eyes were deep and serene as he forced a smirk on his face and said, I only had some experience with it in the past. Inspector Toll fell silent until the carriage arrived outside 36 Zotland Street. Thank you for your assistance, allowing Sir Dewey to be finally free of his problems and be able to find sleep again. He extended his hand and shook Klein's hand. Thanks, Dunn. Thank Dunn on my behalf. Klein nodded slightly and said, All right. He went up the stairs and returned to Blackthorn Security Company. He knocked and entered the captain's office. Dunn? Dunn was waiting for his lunch. Dunn. Klein massaged his forehead, kept his reply short and simple. The root of the problem stemmed from the lead and porcelain factory under Sir Dewey. From the moment they were established to this day, too many deaths have been caused by lead poisoning, and every accident left Sir Dewey with some resentful spirituality. Generally speaking, that wouldn't bring too big of a problem. That might cause nightmares at the most. Dunn had experienced similar cases with his plethora of experience. Klein nodded slightly and said, Yes, that's usually the case. But unfortunately, Sir Dewey encountered a female worker who died of lead poisoning on the streets. She collapsed by the side of the street and I happened to catch a glimpse of Dewey's family emblem. She also harbored intense indignation, worry, and distress. It was only when Sir Dewey gave her parents, brother, and sister a compensation of £300 did her emotions dissipate. This is a societal problem. It isn't rare in the age of steam and machinery. Dunn took out his smoking pipes, smelled the tobacco, and sighed. Workers that make Lenin work in damp environments and are generally diagnosed with bronchitis and joint-related ailments. As for factories with serious powder and dust issues, Even if the dust isn't poisonous, it can still accumulate into lung problems. We don't have to talk about this. As the kingdom develops, I believe this problem will be resolved. Client, let's find a restaurant tonight to celebrate you becoming a official member. All right? Client thought for a moment before saying, how about tomorrow? Captain, I have used spirit vision for an extended period of time today and also used dream divination to directly interact with those resentments. I'm feeling especially drained. I want to return home in the afternoon to get some rest. Would that be okay? Oh, then I'll also head over to the club at about 4 or 5 in the afternoon to see how the club members are reacting to the news of Hannah Svensson's sudden death. No problem. That's only necessary. Dunn chuckled. Tomorrow night it is. Let's do it at Old Will's restaurant next door. I'll get Roseanne to make a reservation. Klein took off his police speak cap and stood up to salute him. Thank you, Captain. See you tomorrow. Dunn lifted his hand and said, hold on. Did you mention that Sir Dewey will give the female worker's parents a compensation of £300? Yes, Clan nodded and immediately understood the reason why the captain had mentioned it. Are you worried that they'll get into trouble because of this wealth? Dunn sighed. I've seen many similar situations in the past. Pass me their address. I'll ask Kenley to arrange for them to leave Tingen for another city to start a new life. All right, Klein replied in a deep voice. With all of that done, he left Dunn's office and entered the break room diagonally opposite. He changed into his original suit and left the police uniform in his locker. Klein took the public carriage back to Daffodil Street in silence. He took off his coat and top hat. He then heated up the leftovers from last night and ate them with a last piece of white bread to fill his stomach. Then he went to the second floor, hung his clothes, and slumped into bed. When he woke up, the pocket watch showed that it was already past 10 past 2 in the afternoon. The sun was hanging high up in the sky, and sunlight shone through the clouds. Underneath the golden splendor, Clarence stood next to his desk and looked at the oriel window. He watched the pedestrian in ragged clothing as they entered or left the Iron Cross Street. He let out a breath slowly, finally overcoming his low spirits. Every journey had to be taken one step at a time. Likewise, his sequence needed to be advanced one level at a time. Everything worked like that. He shook his head and sat down. He started concluding and reorganizing his encounter over the last week so as to reinforce the important points in his mind to prevent himself from forgetting them. 5 minutes before 3 in the afternoon, above a blurry, boundless, grayish-white, silent grey fog stood a lofty palace. An ancient mortal bronze table sat there quietly. On the seat of honor at the long table sat a man already engulfed by the thick grey fog. Clan leaned against the back of the chair and contemplated. He suddenly extended his hand and tapped on the crimson stars that represented justice and the hanged man. Packland, Empress Barrow. Audrey lifted her dress as she quickly walked towards her bedroom. Suddenly, she felt something and looked sideways at the shadow sitting on the balcony. As expected, she saw her golden retriever, Susie, who was sitting there in silence, observing her as always. Audrey sighed and drew a crimson moon on her chest. She then got closer and looked down at her golden retriever from a commanding position. Susie, that's not right. This is peeping. A spectator has to observe in an open manner. The golden retriever lifted its head to look at its owner and shook its tail. After nagging her dog, Audrey didn't delay any further and continued walking towards her bedroom again. In a few seconds of opening and closing the door, she suddenly had a weird idea. I wonder if Mr. Fool would allow Susie to enter that mysterious place. Then there would be 4 members in the Terror gathering, and all of them would be beyond us. No way, Susie can't talk. If they were to let her express her opinion and share her thoughts, Would she do? Bark? How? Why am I mimicking a dog's bark here? Just imagining such a scene feels really strange. A mysterious and solemn gathering with a sudden barking of a dog. Mr. Fool would definitely kick us out of the Tara gathering directly. Audrey locked the door and sat by the side of her bed. She took out a piece of old yellowish brown paper underneath her pillow. She read it repeatedly and entered her spectator state. In a particular area of the Sonia Sea, an old sailboat which was in pursuit of the listener had already left the Rosh, Rorschstead archipelago. Seafarer Alger Wilson was worried that the walls clock machinery would malfunction, so he entered the captain's cabin half an hour earlier in case he had misjudged the time, which would cause his subordinate to see him getting pulled into the tarot gathering. In front of him was a glass of nearly transparent liquor. The rich aroma swirled strand after strand into his nostrils. Alger trembled once again when he thought of the impending gathering. The boundless fog that presented itself in front of him in the hotel's corridor, and the mysterious fool who sat in the middle of the grey fog. He lifted his glass and took a gulp, using the burning sensation in his throat to ease the emotions that had stirred within him. Very soon restored his calm. He was as calm as and stoic as he always was. Chapter 93. A new diary page. Above the grey fog, gigantic stone columns held up a majestic divine hall. Two dark red blobs extended into the faint human figures by the side of the ancient mortal bronze table. Good afternoon, Mr. Fool. Aug- Augmented by a blurry effect, Audrey greeted him with a bow and smiled. It's unfortunate that there's no wine here. Otherwise, we could have a toast to your successful trial. She was referring to the ritualistic magic. You're more powerful than we imagined, Alger Wilson praised as well. Klein was surrounded by the thick fog as usual. He pressed down his right arm and spoke in his normal tone, replying as though it was natural. Great. This means we are on the path of excellence. If you have any matters to tend to that leave you unable to attend the gathering on Mondays, conduct the ritual and inform me. All you have to do is change the line in the incantation, I pray for a good dream with the reason. All right, Audrey quickly agreed. Mr. Fool, I obtained another page of Emerald Roselle's diary. I believe I still owe you one page. I was away from land this week and haven't found any new pages. Alger placed his right hand near his chest and bowed in apology. No matter, I expected my request to take a long time. Klein leaned back into his chair and tapped the armrest with his index finger. He looked at Miss Justice and said, You can express the contents of the diary now. Audrey bowed slightly and said, As you wish. A pen suddenly appeared before her. She recalled the symbols that she had memorized and tried her best to transcribe them. In seconds, she saw that the goat skin was already filled with content. Strange symbols nearly covered the entire page. After checking the contents, she put down her fountain pen and said, It's done. Klein raised his hand and the goatskin parchment appeared in his palm. Shifting his gaze down, he started reading without emotion. July 9th. I suddenly thought of an interesting question. Since the sequence pathways are also called the blessings of the divinities or the path of the divine, then why would the stone slate that records the completed 22 sequence pathways be called the blasphemy slate? Blasphemy. What an interesting term. Just who is the one blasphemed? And who created the blasphemy slate? How could that person hold all of the sequence pathways? Just what other information was on the stone? I really want to see it. July 12th. I realized after I have realized another fact today. The sealed artifacts that are an important component of a church's overall strength, even though some of the sealed artifacts are very, very dangerous. Among the seven churches, the god of craftsmanship wields the least number of sealed artifacts, which are also relatively less dangerous. Did I join an organization without a future? No, I should think of it this way. Only a blank piece of paper can produce a good painting. A weak organization is the best place for me to display my abilities. July 14th. I saw that mysterious Mr. Zaratul today. I even expected him to be the leader of an ancient organization, the Secret Order. Client's pupils constricted when he read this. He nearly revealed an unnatural expression. The Zaratul family only had a certain connection with the secret order in the notes of the Church of Evernight. But now he learned from Emperor Roselle that the mysterious Mr. Zaratul was further determined to be the leader of the secret order. From the looks of it, it's an unquestionable fact that the secret order holds the seer sequence pathway. While Klein was reading the diary, Audrey looked over and began observing him out of habit. However, her field of vision was completely obscured by the thick fog. Momentarily taken aback, Audrey snapped back to her senses and turned her head frantically to look at the other illusory dark red star. I was too reckless, too insolent, too foolish in trying to observe Mr. Fool. I'm I was lucky that he isn't angry. Audrey stuck out her tongue secretly and pretended to admire the scenery. She was just short of humming a lively tune. Alger sat silently, his gaze never leaving the long bronze table. He knew his place, as if he was in the presence of a true god. Lion collected himself and scanned the last portion of the diary. After learning that I have become a savant, Mr. Zaratul mentioned that I had chosen a difficult yet relatively safe path. I asked him why that was the case, but all he did was smile before telling me that the sequence pathway contains secrets beyond my imagination. I couldn't help but ask him which sequence pathway he selected. He told me that his sequence 9 was seer. I intentionally mocked him and asked him if every seer only disclosed half truths, never explaining things more clearly. Furthermore, he was clearly a high sequence beyond us. There was no need for him to continue acting as a seer. Mr. Zaratul told me that it was a habit he adopted from back when he was a seer, that this was a method that could pique my curiosity and make me cooperate with him. He had hoped that I could help him steal a dangerous sealed artifact from the Church of God of Craftsmanship, a relic of the Antigonus family. Clearly, this must wait until I become a core member of the Church of the God of Craftsmanship. I asked Mr. Zaratul how long it would take to digest the potion if I used the acting method, and what standard I should use to determine if I have digested it completely. He told me that for lower sequences, it would only take half a year to digest the potion as long as one strictly used the acting method. In fact, in the fastest case, it might only take a month. The standard measures for progress were simple. Every beyonder would sense it immediately once the potion is completely digested. It is what it is. I asked him for more details, but he merely smiled at him. To hell with his smiles. I'll beat up every seer I see when I become a high sequence beyonder. Rest in peace, Emperor. Klein read the diary several times before looking at Justice and the hanged man again. Sorry for the wait. It's our honor. Audrey was still shocked, forgetting that she was a spectator. She looked at the hanged man and organized her words. Where can I find the psychology alchemist? The psychology alchemists? Klein suddenly recalled the man buying supplementary ingredients for the spectator portion at the Tingan underground markets. Perhaps he was a member of psychology alchemists. Just as Klein was considering how to get closer to that man, the hanged man, Alger Wilson, shook his head and said, Miss Justice, firstly, I don't have a clue. Secondly, I don't think there is any rush in seeking out psychology alchemists. What you should focus now is completely digesting the spectator portion. Audrey glanced at the fool and noticed that he didn't have any intentions of adding to the conversation. She nodded in disappointment and said, all I want is to have plenty of time to prepare so I can approach them more naturally. All right, then when can I digest the spectator portion and stop acting? Is there a standard that indicates when I can? I'm almost at the point where I no longer feel frustrated, do I hear the constant murmurings anymore. Alger looked at the fool in the fog, but saw that he didn't have any intention of speaking. He then deliberated before saying, if you don't use the acting method, the typical rule of thumb is to wait 3 years and confirm that you no longer feel restless or receive any auditory or visual illusions. There's one simple test to determine where you can. That method is to simply exhaust your body to its limits. If you still don't hear any maniacal murmurings or see any strange things at that point, that would mean that you are ready to advance. With regards to the acting method, I have also just come into contact with it. It feels good, so I don't think it will take 3 years. That wasn't useful at all. 3 years? That's too long, Audrey criticized inwardly. She has just thought about this when she heard an armrest being tapped. Audrey froze, then turned her head in joy. She saw the fool tapping on the edge of the long table. Sat straighter, waiting for the fool to speak. Client said in a normal tone, for low sequence beyond us, as long as you strictly stick to acting, you should be able to digest the medicine in half a year. It is even possible to do it in a month. He looked at Justinus and added, as for the science of digestion, you'll know when it comes. You, it doesn't need to be taught. 1 month? Great. Thank you, Mr. Fool, Audrey exclaimed while brimming with joy. Miss Justice, don't think that you are the chosen one. The key point is half a year. Klein lifted his right hand and placed it beside his lips. Half a year, Alger repeated softly. Audrey sensed joy, relief, and intense doubt in his tone. What is he suspicious about? Audrey thought as she asked, Mr. Fool, have you considered adding more members? Klein leaned back casually. He had long prepared an answer. This started as a trial, so I didn't spend much time thinking about extending our meetings. But now, as a regular gathering, we must choose our members carefully. Secrecy is our motto. Audrey nodded gently and said, that is to say that we have to follow a process of observation, recommendation, and testing process. Yes, a process. Yes, you can interpret it that way, Klein affirmed. In his mind, he was thinking about how he could inquire about the secret order and the clown potion. How can I how can I ask questions in a way that benefits my status? How can I ask a question in a way that befits my status? Klein was placed in a difficult spot. At that moment, realizing that Justice temporarily had nothing else to say, Alger took the initiative to speak. I have heard that a listener from Aurora Order is searching for the traces of the true creator, which is the holy residence they advocate. True creator? Audrey asked, puzzled. It's an ancient entity worshipped by numerous secret organizations and cults. They believe that the creator hasn't completely perished. The core he left behind is the true creator. Alger gave a rough explanation. Since the fifth epoch, the true creator has appeared in many forms, such as the hanged giant or the eye behind the shadow curtains. Many people believe that Emperor Roser referenced the imagery of the true creator when he was creating tarot cards. Hence the existence there hence there exists the card of the hanged man. At this point he looked at Klein and said, Mr. Fool, there's nothing with what I said, right? There's not there's nothing wrong with what I said, right? Is he trying to probe for my views on the true creator? Client thought about the bloody man on the cross that Captain saw in Hannah Swinson's dream and immediately had an idea. Doesn't both hanging and the shadows imply evil connotation? Therefore, he chuckled and said, I'm more inclined to call him the fallen creator. Hmm. All right, we'll stop here for today with chapter 93. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. See you next time. Bye bye.